Hey everybody, Quantum here, and in this video I wanted to cover Rune Spell Boost in the current metagame that is post Heirs of the Omen. We're about 4 days into the metagame, and if you've been watching any of the top Japanese streamers in Grandmaster rank, you can kind of see the way the metagame has developed, at least in the first couple of days. There seems to be 4 main decks out there. Again, with a grain of salt, there's obviously more, but the 4 main competitive ones you see repeatedly popping up are the old Spell Boost Rune deck, which is pretty much the only deck, from the older format that made it over into Tier 1 status in the new format. And then you have 3 new decks: Crest Haven, Mode Abyss, which is I think on the lower tier, but still up there doing well. And then of course Gilded Sword, the new adaptation of Swordcraft. And so in this video, I want to cover the adaptations that you could make for Spell Boost Dirt or Rune, basically, and how it plays in this metagame. While the deck list remains relatively unchanged, and there are a couple of different variations you can make, like you can argue you don't need William anymore since people aren't really running Wardhaven as much, even though, you know, this card was mainly used against Sword. The old Sword build also doesn't really pop up nearly as much as Gilded Sword, in which case, you know, this card has very limited viability. But what changes for the most part is the way that you play now into certain decks. And we're going to take a look at this deck into the new Crest Haven and into Swordcraft as well. Rune is still very, very strong because it has an OTK game plan. The Cocytus deck is still very, very strong, right? The Apocalypse deck. So once you get this off, your opponent really has limited options and is really on a clock to win the game if they can't turn it out very quickly. Gilded Sword is probably still your hardest matchup, but just like with Sword last format where they would try to aggro you out early, this time they're a little bit more explosive with their damage with the Sincero. But with the Norman healing and the Sage Lights, right, you have a total of 3 times 4 is 12, and then another 12 is 24 if you evo all 3, which you wouldn't really do, but let's just say you have technically 24 healing off Normans alone with evos, and then another 12 off Sage Light. So you have 36 healing in the deck plus your 20 base life. You have 56 total defense points that people might have to try to push through, right? Obviously it doesn't matter if they can OTK you with 20 damage in 1 turn, but like you can keep healing up depending on the scenario and the matchups in order to combat the opponent's strategy. So that's why this deck remains resilient. Other adaptations that I've made is I've put back in 2 copies of Miss Miranda, which seems very strange, but I've cut back on Melvi, and I've opted to keep Penelope. I thought about cutting her, but I opted to cut Edelweiss down to 1 and put in 2 copies of the new Gilneas. I think that's how you say it. Gilnels. I don't know. Whatever. Gilnelis. I don't know. But this card being a 3-cost card, you can play this on curve, which is kind of nice because it can slow down an aggro-oriented deck towards you or just mitigate some damage. Also, for the evolve, it's healing. So depending on the scenario you're in, right, you could either opt to evo the Anangrea, which usually clears 3. You definitely, I think, want to try to save an evo for the most part for the Burgent, because the Onion Engine is really one of your primary ways to spell boost with this deck still, since, you know, you can see here you're only at 14 spells. The evo for the Norman, at least for my playstyle, I find myself not needing to evo Norman a lot. In fact, most of the time I'm drawing 3 cards with Norman. It's only if I'm really, really like aggroed out, I'll use the defense restore, as well as use my evo point on him to restore defense. Again, if your opponent is aggroing you out, they're likely burning through their resources very quickly, so you may not need to catch up in resources by drawing 3. You're better off utilizing the restore 4, right? So again, it depends on the state of the game, on what ability you use, and if you spend the evo point on him or not. Against Crest Haven, for example, I find myself like just drawing 3 because they don't do enough damage to me quick enough that I need to restore like 8 defense. They may get me down to like 16, and I'm like, that's not a threat to make me have to restore 4 right away. I can probably use a Sage Light for that, since in that matchup, the Crest Haven matchup, I don't need to deal 4 damage to all enemy followers anymore. Like similar to what I was explaining with William at the beginning, this third ability, while it was very, very relevant last format when Wardhaven and Sword were around with, like, you know, the warded characters that they would put up, this ability becomes much less relevant. Now you're mainly using this to restore 4 defense. So you can see what I mean when I say the meta has adapted. Aside from that, I don't think there's really any other changes. Yeah, this is the only set 3 card I think that I'm playing, aside from just switching up the deck a little bit. Again, you could argue to cut the Williams. It's probably correct to cut them. Like, they haven't really come up for me at all. But let's go ahead and jump into some matches in ranked. So this will be, I did make it to diamond last format on this account, but this will be in, like, everyone got reset to ruby. So this will be ruby ranked matches. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the meta matchups. Okay, so to start things off, we're going to be going up against the new Crest Haven. Again, this matchup is, I don't want to say 50-50 because I haven't played it too much, but every time I have played it with Rune, which is about 3 times, it's been relatively straightforward. And you're going to see kind of the game plan we go for. We go first, so we don't have the play point. The opponent here goes Sanctuary on 1. That's pretty good. Because we drew the 1 of Edelweiss, we're actually going to go for Penelope instead of Miranda, but obviously, like, we have nothing to spell boost in our hand anyways. So they go for the Devotee, and that's fine. Again, we play out the Miss Miranda because it's our only play on 3. Nothing to spell boost, but that's fine. Like, the thing I think a lot of people overlook with this card is it's basically, on Evo, a better Anangrea, because not only does it deal 3 damage, which is what Anangrea does, Anangrea becomes a 6/6, which could be relevant, obviously, in this, depending on the scenario. But if you have the option, like, evolving this over the Anangrea is better because it spell boosts as well, whereas the Anangrea does not on Evo, right? So you'll actually see that come up in this matchup. They drop another Devotee and then pass turn. I make a mistake here. I throw the Penelope into that when I just should have, like, I don't know what I was thinking. I think I just kind of was like, whatever. So obviously what should have happened here, right, is I should have just played the Edelweiss. Whatever it takes out, it doesn't matter because Edelweiss will crash into the other thing and take no damage anyways. Then I swing for 4 damage instead of 2. So I did it this way. I missed out on 2 damage. A little unfortunate, but again, just shows you how important it is not to play fast and actually think through your plays because you make mistakes like that. So I just missed out on 2 damage there, unfortunately. They go for the Marwyn on curve here, so on turn 4. This is actually, like, I've played this deck. This is actually not as great as you might think. Like, yeah, it's great to see this on curve, especially when you go second. You can evo it right on turn 4. But usually you want the Grimnir crest first because the way that the crests trigger is in order, like, of here. So now that you've got this permanent Marwyn quest, if you see Grimnir later on, it'll come after the Marwyn crest, which means that this will trigger for the damage across the enemies before the Grimnir. Whereas if you had it in reverse and the Grimnir crest was first, it would deal the 2 damage on the Super Evo, and then it would likely clear a board, and then your Marwyn crest would deal the damage directly to face. So because you have it in reverse, on your Super Evo, you won't get as much value off your Grimnir crest because the Marwyn might clear the board first, and then Grimnir clears nothing, and then you do no damage to face. So that's something to be aware of, something I found out just by practicing. I end up sacrificing 2 damage again in order to get the double onions on the board, just because I'm like, this 1 of Dimension Climb has to be my savior, so I need all the spell boosts I can get. The opponent here goes for Wilbert, using their play point on it, so this is their 3rd crest, 2 of which are permanent, and they're going to opt to attack again, so not getting the crest boosts, but they're Wilbert's on 2 defense now. So we're going to go ahead, throw an onion into it, throw 2 onions into it, clear it off, get the other 2 cards on the field, and then go for Anangrea for some additional spell boosting. Use the Anne Summoning to take out 1, and then here you can see me use the Miss Miranda Evo. So we're tied up on Evos. Again, I've played this Crest Haven deck a decent amount. I know that they don't really care about their Evos. They care about the crest. They'll waste Evo points for crests, right? Like, that's how this deck is supposed to function. So, like, keeping up with their Evos is fine. If I can retain 1 Super Evo, though, for Coctus, since I have it, I drew it early, that will be enough, right? So we're just going to go ahead, push the 4 face damage. Again, better to evolve this. Not only does it deal the extra damage in this case, but it also spell boosts the hand by an extra 1. They go for a Vessel Clear there, which is great for me because there's no other response and they have nothing really to trigger except for 2 damage to face. So here you're going to see Norman, exactly what I talked about in the deck profile, come in and draw 3. Don't need to heal or anything with it, and this just gasses up my hand, so I have a lot of counterplay. Down comes Grimnir for permanent crest number 3 for the opponent, and then the dose will reduce the Norman down to 1 defense so that the Marwyn crest will take it out, as well as dealing 1 damage to face. Onion comes in, I make a mistake again, right, attacking with it instead of, I was like, oh, I forgot I had these in my hand, I should have played these first. Obviously, I don't draw into anything spell boostable, so it's fine. But yeah, just to use up play points, I'm just going to use the Sage Light there to heal, and again develop a very, very small board. I know what my game plan is here. They're gonna opt to do the draw 3, heal 3, and that's fine. The Grimnir likely doesn't attack because yeah, they have the Crest, which will deal the same amount of damage. I get the Onion back, go for Foresight and Melvie, and then continue to try to redraw through the deck. I do have a very powerful setup. I do finally see the Kuon here, and this is everything you need. If you're wondering about the Crest Haven matchup, like obviously Cositis and Dimension Climb are your primary targets, as it is in every matchup. But typically, if you have this setup ready, like obviously I need another 5 spell boost. The Kuon on 10, right, to get the instant 5 spell boost will obviously help a lot to accelerate the last little bit of spell boosting you need to get this Dimension Climb to 0. And then obviously push 10 face damage, which is great. The Kuon on the Super Evo to give the Noble Shikigami the Storm will also clear the barrier, which you'll see in this matchup. I'll point that out when it comes up. But the other critical point is Norman. If you can decline with a Norman in your hand, it's very strong, because if you end up redrawing into that Norman or draw into it a little bit later, you drop the Norman and you draw 3 from the Apocalypse deck, right? Which is extremely strong. If you don't OTK that turn, you'll definitely OTK the next turn, and it just greatly increases your chances of drawing the 10 cost spell, which means if you end up drawing it the next turn, you win the game. If your opponent can't win the game on the pass back, because, well, as long as you have a Super Evo, right? You 10 cost spell, you Super Evo, you attack for game, and that's GG, right? So in this particular matchup, again, there's a couple of important interactions after you go for Cositis that we'll point out. So let's go ahead and continue on here. Again, just slowly developing, putting some blockers on board to block the Crest, putting them on, you need to constantly clear my board, which he is doing, to be fair. But again, knowing how this deck plays, you just know that you're on a slow clock, but you're still on a clock. And there you can see the interaction that I talked about earlier, where the Morrowind quest triggered to clear the board, and then it dealt limited damage to face, and then the Grimnir Crest couldn't take out anything because the opponent has a Super Evo, right? The Grimnir Crest triggers, but because their Crest order is mixed up, they don't get that extra value of the extra face damage. Not that it would matter in this scenario, but it does matter. It does come up in a lot of other scenarios. So now we're on turn 10. We're going to clear this Onion and then go for the Kuon. The opponent does have barrier, so be very aware of this, right? You don't want to throw your 10 damage into a barrier, obviously. But the Super Evo damage, the 1 ping damage, obviously the best way to break a barrier, will definitely trigger it. So then your 10 damage Shikigami can hit face. So here you can see there, deal 1 damage to the barrier or 0 to trigger the barrier, and then hit 10, bring the opponent down to 8. They have no real way to deal with that Shikigami except for vesseling it, I guess. So down comes Vessel, and you can see throughout this matchup how much pressure we constantly put on the opponent. They're not able to develop, like, I think, what is it, the new 3-cost 1/4 that heals 1 when you don't attack. They don't even have time to develop any of that stuff. I'm sure they have them in hand, but they just are so far behind. I'm sure they have Himika in hand, maybe like a 1-of or something, but they just can't react fast enough here. So on 10, again, they have an open board. Perfect time to Cositis, go for the decline. And what did I say about the Norman? Here you can see we draw the Norman. We're going to drop it and draw 3. We have Stormy Blast to clear off any big threat that the opponent might drop. We've got Sage Light to heal or potentially board wipe. Not that I would expect that Aether is in this deck. We've got Looking Smart to draw more. And this is where the Apocalypse deck really counters the Crest deck. These Servants, they're 13/13 bodies. The Morrowind quest at most deals 5 AoE, right? Split. They're not taking this out. Right, like this thing is going to absorb all the damage, so your face is pretty much protected as long as you have these boys out. The opponent, again, keeping track of what your opponent has here. The opponent has played, I think, 2 out of their 3 most likely Unholy Vessels for board wipes, so their interaction is very limited, and obviously the Apocalypse deck can win the game very, very quickly. So we only have 4 play points left. We're just going to go ahead and drop a Servant, right, heal up for 3. Not 4, sorry, not that we need it necessarily. Jean comes in, and this was probably the best thing the opponent could have. And they go for Torrent. I get a little lucky there in it not hitting the Servant, because in this scenario, if they hit Servant, the Morrowind quest would deal the final 4 to the Ruler, because he was a 10/4. Again, it wouldn't matter in the long run, but my Servant survives an extra turn, which means now I get to OTK. Maybe not 1 turn kill, but just basically win the game this turn, because down comes Demon of Purgatory here, which will clear the barrier again and the Jean, and then yeah, just drop another Ruler, heal for 4, and then attack for game or super evo just to get some challenges in. And you can see the constant pressure that we were able to put on the opponent, force them into how they should be using their crests instead of letting them have the ability to say like, I want to clear, I want to deal face damage, whatever. Like they constantly had to deal with the board. And then once you see the ruler combo, they're like the clock switches. Now the opponent's on a very, very short clock, and if they haven't dealt enough damage to you through the crest, which again is a slow burn deck, you end up coming out on top. And so this is one of the matchups where I would say Rune is favored. All right, so this was the match actually prior to the Crest Haven match, but this is the Gilded Sword matchup. So again, just another top tier deck in the format. How does Rune perform against Gilded Sword? Going first again, you know, not great, but typically Rune is okay with it as long as you see something like Witch's New Brew or Foresight in the beginning, so that you're not kind of wasting a turn. Burning one card through your deck is always very nice, as well as getting a spell boost off if it is relevant. So here the opponent has no turn 1 or turn, like no play point turn 2 play, so they want to save their play point for something. Down comes Devotee, gets them the Gilded Boots, and passes. Well, we have the Earth Sigils with the Penelope up, and here we draw double William, which, like I mentioned, in this particular matchup and in the Crest Haven, obviously, as you saw, like they don't go for wide boards. The William's value really plummets a lot now, so you may opt to cut him from the deck. He still has some value in this matchup because they may play things like the Amalias and stuff still, but most likely they're not playing it. So here I opt to play it slow. I opt not to burn through a Sage Light. I'm going to wait to clear the board with the Rejected Artiz, allowing the opponent to hit me for 3 or more with, you know, the quick... what is this again? Quick Blader. They already have the Sincero in hand. They evolve the Octrice, and they hit me for 4, which is fine, because again, Normans plus Sage Lights is good. The 5/5 of the Octrice is actually kind of a problem, so I'm actually going to drop Anne and Grey, which I top decked there, instead of going for the Onion play, which is what I wanted to do originally, because the 2 Onions won't clear the Usurpation guy, but the Anne and Grey Evo will clear the board. So yeah, that was the better play. I can still develop the Onion the next turn, which, as you can see, the opponent is a bit like their board is a bit underwhelming here. So I'm going to be able to go for Onion, hit directly with the Anangrea, and then get my spell boost off with the 2 Onions, evolve the Burgent, and get the Onion Engine online, and end the turn with 2 6/5s. This is like putting them on, I think you have to Sincero. They're going to go ahead and fuse. I think they're on 4 now with that. So they drop it, and they're going to be forced to Super Evo. They will do 8 to me, which is a concern, because they could also have Odin, but Odin on Super Evo only deals 7. So what am I going to do here? Bring it down to an 8/8, go for the Norman, and this is an example, again, talking about in the deck profile, where you would opt to Norman double heal. The Onion plus the Norman is exactly 9 damage, right? Which Sincero becomes an 8/9 on the Super Evo. So this is a perfect answer to the Sincero. We bring the opponent down to 13, and we're back up to 16. They did indeed have the Odin, so they're going to clear my Norman there, and then do a regular Evo to push 6 damage, putting me down to 10. Again, at this point, I'm like, okay, they're still probably a little far from another Sincero, so I'm going to take this turn a little slow. We opt to Sage Light, heal, go up to 18, and then probably Stormy Blast away. Yep, the Odin, and then just pass turn, playing it very, very slow. Our decline is reduced down to 6. We have another Norman, which we would like to draw with, obviously, and you can see here again the limited value of these Williams, both on spell boost 11, but not really doing too much in this matchup. We draw the Ruler here, which is like really, really strong. We're just going to drop the Norman, draw 3, and then crash the Onion, probably. Okay, Looking Smart, which is a great top deck there. Or was it, sorry, it was Homework Time, right? Looking Smart is the after the spell boost. Crash the Onion and then pass turn. See what the opponent wants to do. They can Albert me if they want, put me down to whatever. It's fine, because next turn we're going to be on turn 10. We don't have the decline ready though, right? It's still 4 away from being spell boosted up. We draw into Anangrea, which is really nice. We go for the Onion, we go for the Penelope, and then we go for Anangrea, which I think gives us the final 3 spell boost to reduce it down to 0. The decline in the hand there, as you can see, which means now next turn we have Coctus Decline with our 2 Williams that are basically doing nothing still here, right? The opponent only has one Super Evo left, so they're not going to use it on the Zirconia. They have nothing left in their hand, and this is where Gilded Swordcraft can kind of run out of gas, and this is why Rune is still really relevant. You can see all the cards I have in my hand. I still have OTK lines, and I don't need my Super Evo necessarily because of the Cactus Declimb combination here. So we're going to clear up some board space so that we can drop some of these threats from the Apocalypse deck here. And yeah, Super Evo for no reason. I probably shouldn't have done that, but whatever. The opponent just ends up scooping anyways, so it's all good. But yeah, they basically need like multiple Sinceros and have to hope that you don't have healing in order to close the game out quickly. To be fair, like Spicy's obviously like one of the best players in the world, if not the best, but definitely up there. Plays Gilded Sword, he plays it very, very effectively. And he, like, if you watch him play, he's very, very aggressive in the Rune matchup. So you definitely need, you know, depending on the caliber of player you're playing against, to be very aware of what kind of damage can they output and always keep your life above that breakpoint. Because things will come out of nowhere, right? Like Gilded Boots boosting up an Albert, the Blade hitting you for an extra 1 point of damage, Quick Step Blader coming in for an extra 1 point of damage. Like there's a lot of little things. It's no longer I have to be above 12 to avoid Albert Super Evo. You have to take into account when it's on turn 10 plus, they have that extra point to do that extra little bit of damage. And on Albert, right, the Gilded Boots adds an extra 2 damage on the Super Evo, right, hitting twice. So yeah, a lot of little nuances in that matchup, but again, you can see Rune, if it's able to get its combo off, is still very, very effective into the 2 top decks in the metagame, at least at the start of the metagame. So I don't think I played against any Mode Abyss so far on this account with the Rune deck, but as a bonus matchup, I guess I'll show you the other kind of new, probably the funnest deck out of this. I mean, Mode Abyss is kind of fun too, but like I think Dragoncraft is always the most fun. It's sad that it still just like can't break that threshold of getting into the top. I think it's a good deck, but it definitely, like, you can see where these other decks are just a step above. So in this one here, once again going first, like unfortunate, but it's fine. We go for Penelope on 2. The opponent has the coined out Dragontine, which is probably the best thing that Dragoncraft could have, right? Getting that permanent advance on your play points there. We're going to go ahead and be the aggressor in this matchup by going for Melvi, which is crazy. They're on Seraphic Tidings, so that tells me they're probably on a Fenny build where they want to draw cards after Fenny to get some great value there. But in the meantime, we are going to push some serious damage because the opponent has been very slow to develop. They could go for Merman here if they have it. If they don't have Merman, they would be in a bit of trouble. They do have the new Rush Disdain card that heals, so they're going to be able to heal back up for 2 and put a 3/5 body on board, but the Anangrea, once again, as usual, cleanly answers this. I really regret in set 1 not buying 5 bundles to get these sleeves. I didn't spend any money in set 1 really until like towards the end. So the bundles were already gone, but yeah, it's unfortunate because Anangrea really is like one of the best legendaries. It's so good. Anyways, they do eventually get the Merman here and clear out the board, but we've already put them down to 14. Down comes Norman here on curve, and I opt to develop the Golem because I'm like, well, on 7, they'll be on 8 technically. They could go for what do you call it? Neptune clear. But it would force them to throw like so many bodies into the golems because the 2/2 orcas obviously don't clear the 3/3 golem. So here you can see exactly that happening. And they're not gonna, well, they are gonna be able to deal with the Norman just barely. But it puts them on only the Neptune and they use the Super Evo. So that's like good for me here. We're gonna respond with a Kuon, which Paper Shikigami plus Super Evo Kuon will clear the Neptune, and then the Celestial Shikigami will hit 4 to face, putting the opponent back down to 14. You know, the healing that the Neptune gives you is definitely strong, but again, with Rune, as long as you draw through to the Cactus, which again, that's what Rune is designed to do, draw through your deck as much as possible, we'll be okay. Down comes the Ocean Rider, which gives them another 2 healing thanks to the Overflow ability, and they've got Call in order to get even more healing and Megalorcas on board to clear out the Kuon board. That's fine though, because we've spell boosted up quite a bit with that Kuon. We now have a perfect opportunity to develop the Onion Engine here. So we're down to our final Super Evo. We've traded our last Evo for an Onion Engine, which is fine because I'm not too worried about Dragoncraft at this stage. they'll need multiple Storm cards, which I guess they could have in order to break through, but I've got double Sage Light and Norman in hand, right? So I'm not feeling too worried. They keep healing. They're back up to 17 on that last call. And yeah, they have a board that looks kind of decent. So we're going to Onion clear the Orca, drop the Edelweiss, which is going to deal 4 to that Odin. And then now we can take the turn off, essentially, and double heal with the Sage Light. Since again, Sage Light doesn't need to clear in this matchup. Back up to 20 with a 4/4 on the board. I cannot believe this baited out a Twilight Dragon. I mean, they probably have 2 or 3 in the deck, even with the new legendary, the Azurifreed or something. But anyways, we're going to Norman here, probably draw. Yeah, draw cards. Again, this is the build before the Melvie adaptation. I think I only adapted Melvie in for the Crest Haven match that I played. But like, I just find myself not needing as much Earth Sigils now, right? Because I'm not using the Sage Light clearly as much, right? Like, I don't need the 3 Earth Sigils plus Sigils for Norman and all that stuff. Like, you saw in the Crest Haven match, I had like 10 Earth Sigils. I don't need the pay 3 clear or deal 4 damage across the board, right? Anyways, down comes the Merman, healing the opponent back up to 20. So all that pushing of damage is completely irrelevant in the early game, but it does force the opponent into these lines where they have to heal. We're slowly building our way up. We've got double decline. One of them is already ready to go. We're on the end game where we're each at 10 play points. So I don't think I was on the new legendary either, the Guildneys. So obviously here it would be really good because I would get the spell to the hand now that we're both on 10 play points. They go for a second Twilight Dragon, and that's totally fine. We are going to cock this into the decline here, putting back, yeah, 2 dimension climbs as well as a Kuon. We redraw the Kuon, which is pretty good. We're going to go for double Servant into Silent Rider, and I think I burned my Evo here. Yeah, on the Servant to clear the Twilight, because I'm like, he can't really, like, even another Twilight here doesn't clear, right? So I'm like, what could he really have to clear? And yeah, it's nothing. So they just end up scooping because the X and 10 plus bodies, like, I guess the new Azurifreet it deals 12 to the board. So, and then they would the Super Evo would crash. So I mean, I would still end with a Servant. The Azurifreet does have ward, but then I just clear it with like anything next turn anyways. So yeah, I think the opponent was cooked no matter what. But that's a little bonus dragon matchup. Again, just showing Rune can push through anything with the ruler combo still.